Hey gear enthusiasts, welcome back to Gearfacts. Today I'm comparing the lowest in the Yamaha PSR-E series, that's the 403, and the highest in the PSR-E series, which is the 453. I guess the place to start is with the number of voices. According to the front panel here, we've got voices up to number 504, and on this one we've got voices up to number 758. So 250 more voices in the higher model. Moving over to the other side, the PSR-E series most significant addition is these two control knobs here. They can control effects, cutoff resonance, bass boost, all sorts of parameters can be assigned to these knobs. Obviously the 453 has more things it can do with them. By default it's cutoff and resonance. It can also control reverb and chorus, which is the same as the 403. Attack and release, also the same as the 403. The big advantage with the 453 is that it has multiple effects. So you've got rotary, flanger, phaser, things like that. Not a massive selection, but enough to keep it interesting. That can be controlled using these two dials right here, whereas you don't have that multi-effects system on the 403. You've got reverb and chorus, and that's it. But it is still nice to know that those parameters can be controlled. The response of these dials isn't overly harsh either, particularly with cutoff and resonance. It's nice and smooth. So many synthesizers go more harsh than what most of us would ever need in music. On either of these models, you're not going to suddenly get a harsh squeal like you can get sometimes. Not something you have to worry about with either of these keyboards. Both of them just have the pitch bend wheel. Modulation can be controlled from the software, but you can't control it live on the fly unless you do some tricky handling with the dials that I was talking about just a moment ago. Before I get into some software functions, the other major differences on the front here are that there are more styles, of course. With the 453 we've got 221 styles compared to the 403, which has 155 styles. On top of the styles, we've also got some DJ patterns as well. These are especially high quality styles that have been put together presumably by professional composers. There are 24 of these DJ patterns on this one. This guy doesn't have that feature. So if you want to get a party started but you don't actually have any playing or composing ability, then anyone can make a really good mix straight out of the box with this one. This one's going to make you work a little bit harder. You'll actually have to have some capability to get musical with a keyboard if you're going to do a really good live set. A lot of people might consider that a completely pointless extra feature, but it's there. Now the 403 is not what I would describe as a good looking keyboard. It has this kind of awkward big clear plastic panel on the front, which just looks very pointless and ugly to me. The 453 clearly looks a little bit more professional and gives the impression of being a more serious instrument. It's not just skin deep though. Remembering patches is also much easier on the 453. You've got your bank switch, 4 buttons. You can cycle through 8 banks, each containing 4 separate slots in which to save a patch. So that's a total of 32 there. It's more difficult on the 403. There's your memory button, just 2 slots for each. Both of them can hook up to a PC by USB though, so in theory you can save an infinite number of patches. The final test though is of course in sound. First of all, I'll say the speakers are louder, not physically larger, but they have more wattage and they are louder on the 453 than on the 403. If that's not an issue though, it just comes down to the quality of the actual sounds. And here we get a lot of double up and a lot of great similarities. In the 403, they really have chosen a great selection of sounds. The 453 does give a few more in each category. Particularly in the synth section, there are a few standouts, but really the core quality sounds are available on the 403. I don't think there are many people who will be really wanting for that much more in a home keyboard, especially when you remember that you can modify your sound quite strongly using cutoff and resonance, and also the modest effects system in the 403. So for the purpose of comparison, let's hear some examples. Different sounds demonstrated there, but I think that gives a clear picture that the actual quality of those waveforms is pretty comparable between the two. As I said, Much more choice, much more flexibility with the 453. Finally, while we're on the subject of sound too, I'll mention that it's just 32 polyphony with this one, 48 with this one. So that's quite a big difference if you're doing MIDI composing, particularly if you're connected to your computer and you're getting quite elaborate with your sound. There are other differences that I could mention, but for me those are the key ones. So you're left with the burning question, which one's better value? Well, these are getting quite affordable now. But anyway, for the sake of argument, let's say that the 453 is twice the price of the 403. My answer is yes, I think it is worth the extra to get the 453 because the multi-effects really do open up a whole new soundscape for you. Also, it is nice to have a couple of hundred extra sounds when you are just trying to choose that exact right bass sound for your song or the exact right lead sound. The 453 does just give you that little bit more scope to get things exactly the way you like it. Same with its rhythms too. It is nice to have just a few extra rhythms just to be sure that you are getting the exact right feel for the tune that you have in mind. Many users might find the 403 a little bit more restrictive in that sense. I guess it all depends how far your needs really go. It's worth considering too what other instruments you'll be playing with. Having the bigger, louder speakers does make it easier to jam with other musicians. I've also found when I'm doing workshops for classes that it is nice to tilt the keyboard up towards the class and you can fill the room quite well with sound. Whereas the 403, if the classroom does get a little bit rowdy and a bit busy, the sound can be a little bit lost in everything else that's going on in the room. I guess in summary you'd say that the 453 does take you in a bit more of a professional direction. It's one step away from going to a dedicated synthesizer that you would have to plug into an amplifier or a PA system. The reason I like to stay one step off that pace though is because home keyboards force you to be a little bit more creative and to think a little bit more deeply, whereas a lot of synthesizers will do all the work for you. Their presets often sound very impressive, their beats are always very contemporary, but for me that pulls you away a little bit from your own creative instinct and encourages musicians to rely on presets that are provided by great companies like Yamaha, Korg, Alesis, M-Audio, all those great synthesizer makers. And I guess by that same argument, the 403 is again going to force you to be a little bit more creative and bring out a little bit more of your own personality and talent in the music. I'll finish up by answering a question that I often get asked with these kinds of videos that I make, and that is, what do the piano patches sound like? Are they any good? So I'll give you a sample of 3 from each unit. So straight away we're into the harpsichords there with the PSR-E403, and we still have some more piano voices to choose from with the 453, which is to be expected. Anyway, I hope you found that general comparison useful. I'll sum up by saying it is a simple case of getting what you pay for, but that's for you to decide. Thanks for watching Gearfacts everyone. Please hit that like button or subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Gearfacts.